So the first thing we can take care of is make sure we have some kind of ramp for controlling how they change in size through time. So let's create our norm age. It's a float. Norm age is going to be equal to age divided by life. And just to be safe, let's keep clamping these attributes or these gradients from between 0 and 1 because we are using them to control ramps and it makes sense. So I'm going to keep clamping these just to be safe, and we'll use this parameter, this flow, this variable in a ramp, channel ramp called size ramp, which is going to be taking into account the norm age, and then be multiplied by this maximum size. Regarding the maximum size, we may want to change this bit. Let's say that the maximum size is actually 0.002, and then they eventually fade out to 0. The size ramp, let's hit the magic button, and the size ramp, we want them to start big and end at 0. Let's change this to B-spline, and let's have them kind of abruptly stop, something like that. So now we have a ramp size. The other thing is that I want to control is we want to be able to establish some sort of opacity channel for this. And let's say that we'll use the same structure, Control A, Control C. I just want this line actually. Control C, Control V. I'm going to say that my opacity. The reason why I tend to add this my underscore, it's not just because I'm kind of egocentric and very possessive. It's actually because I want to make sure that I'm not using some variable name or some attribute name that's already being used by Houdini in the background or without me being aware of it. And that might cause some issues. And just to make sure that doesn't happen, because these are really very hard to detect. And I've run into some of those problems before. So just make sure I tend to go with just adding this, and that way I'm sure it's not going to be uh, being used already. So the opaque ramp, norm age, same thing, and the maximum ramp, maximum opacity, max opaque, same thing. So I'll hit the magic button. I'll establish that the maximum opacity can be 1. And the same thing, I want them to start very opaque. And then with the interpolation, let's say they kind of lose opacity quite a bit and then they kind of fade out slowly. Probably opacity of 1 is too much, but as long as they kind of almost immediately, let's go with 0.9. So they're not completely opaque. This doesn't need to go all the way up to 0. 0.1 is enough because they are kind of going to 0 in size. So yeah, I think this will be an interesting effect to have. Now, the other thing that I want to make sure we have is an actual shader for this. So I'm going to go to the object level, and I'm going to be creating some shaders, a material network here for effects shaders. So I'm going to create a material network. I'm going to call it shaders effects, and I'm going to create a redshift material builder, not this, RSMB material builder, and I'll call this blast. Now, once we have this, what I'm going to be using is the color that we already have. So that's going to be an important element. User color user data. I'm going to use this. Make sure that it's actually loading CD. And this is going to go into the diffuse. And then we're also going to be loading this into the emission here. So not here, but on the overall, we have the emission color, and we're going to be connecting this with the emission color. Now, we do want to make use of the opacity that we just created. So it's scalar user data. And I'm going to be changing this name to my opaque and connecting this to the opacity color. Even though it's a color, we're going to be using a scalar. I'm going to leave this like this. And so now we have self-illumination and we have some opacity, and this should give us a very different result from what we had here. So let's save the file just to be safe so we don't lose our progress, and let's hit render. Of course, I forgot to apply the shader, so that's something we definitely need to do. And this shader should be applied at object level. Okay, let's dive inside just so we can keep control over this. And again, hit 3. I created a shortcut key, so Control 3, so that I can quickly jump into this. And let's open render view again and hit render. I'm going to stop the render at this time because I forgot that the default shader has reflection on it. So I'm going to go back to the material network here. I'm actually going to create another shortcut for this, Control 2, set a quick mark, and here on this one, make sure that the reflection is at 0, because we really don't need any reflection on this. We just want to have something in there. And the other thing I probably forgot is here on the overall emission weight, let's put this at 1, otherwise it's not doing anything. With this alone, we already have a pretty interesting look. If you check your alpha channel, you should see that we do have some variation going on in there. So that's definitely something we really want to make sure we have some grading on the alpha as well.